Voi per 21 minuti.
So what I do as a neurophilosopher is this. I'm interested in how the developing sciences, but most especially neuroscience, but also psychology, anthropology, linguistics, evolutionary biology, how they can have an impact on traditional philosophical questions. Questions such as, what is the nature of consciousness? What is the nature of knowledge? How do we learn and remember? How does perception work? What is it to have a self? And for all of those questions, I think we are in a kind of new period. And that's largely, I think, because neuroscience has developed to a point where where results in neuroscience can begin to show us something about the neurobiological underpinnings of what we traditionally think of as mental processes. So what I want to do today is to say a little bit about the historical tradition that we think of as natural philosophy, and then come forward to the modern period. Now, traditionally, there have been two very different schools of thought. One is typified by Hippocrates, the great Greek physician who in the 4th century BC made the following observation. He said, all of our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions are a function of the physical brain. They are produced by the physical brain, are nothing but activities of the physical brain. And this tradition was furthered by the English philosopher Hobbes, the Scottish philosopher David Hume. A very different tradition, really starting with Plato, took the view that the mind is completely different from the brain, and that it is the mind that feels and thinks and perceives and reasons, whereas the brain is just a sort of physical causal device. This view was also held by Descartes, who I think gave it a much sort of deeper articulation than Plato, and also by the German philosopher Leibniz. Now, the problem with the view always was, and Descartes realized this, how can something that has absolutely no physical properties whatever cause anything, cause a result in something that is physical? Descartes was acutely aware of the problem, and the problem was further amplified by Hume, and it never really went away. By the time the 19th century rolled around, the great German philosopher Hermann von Helmholtz realized that the problem was much worse even than Descartes imagined. The problem was that if there were causal effects from the non-physical soul onto the physical brain, then there would be a violation of the law of conservation of energy, or as we would now say, post-Einstein, the conservation of mass energy. And so Helmholtz said, how could that possibly work? The second thing that Helmholtz did, and maybe other people had thought this, but Helmholtz did it in the most systematic way. He realized that much of what goes on in the brain is non-conscious. But unlike Descartes, he thought that it was very often adaptive to the context, that it was flexible, and that it was intelligent. And he thought that, for example, in the case of perception, that early parts of visual cortex do a whole lot of processing of which we are completely unaware at the conscious level. And that what we are aware of is the result of a lot of integration and very intelligent, smart, clever processing. Freud took that idea up. Now, I'm going to speak about Freud before psychoanalysis and all that. Freud was an aphasiologist before he was a psychoanalyst. And Freud was very interested in the phenomena of speech in general. And he made the observation, which many of you, I'm sure, have done also, which is this, that when we speak, we are not consciously aware of particular word selection or of organizing those words into a grammatical sentence. That we know roughly what the gist is of what we're going to say, but non-conscious processes take care of word selection and putting those words together in a coherent form.